Top of the morning, everybody. Eric Solbach out in the shop today. I am bending up metal for the next batch of panniers. It's a pretty good sized batch. Just 8 sets of just the side cases right here. And so, you know, I spent a lot of time basically trying to chase the perfect bend. There's a lot going on when it comes to bending metal, and it is very, very difficult to get a perfect bend. And so I thought I'd share really quick what I go through and how that's done. There's a lot going on when it comes to a bend. So basically, it's not perfectly square. There's always a radius to the bend. Typically when I go through and bend up a batch, you're probably staring at my back right now. Maybe I should move the camera, hold up. Basically, all those lines that I scribed when I was doing the layout, I'm now going through and I'm making bends where those lines are at. And that's better. That would be the air compressor. So anyway, what I was talking about with the radius, so basically I spent a lot of time chasing after a perfect bend. There are a lot of variables going on, one of which is the radius that's created as the bend is made. And that is largely controlled by what's called offset. On this particular brake, the offset is controlled by this beam here. You can adjust it here and here at the bottom. You can change the attitude of this and create, if you were to look really close, there's a little bit of a ridge right here. And that ridge has to be the same all the way down. And when you make that bend, there's an allowance for the 80,000th thickness of the metal. And so there's just a whole bunch of different adjustments that you can make on the machine itself. The offset has to be absolutely perfect. You're contending with things like flex in the machine itself. You can see I've added some steel here to try to keep this beam here from flexing. I've added steel here to keep this from flexing. There's just a lot going on, and it just seems I'm constantly trying to chase the perfect bend and keep everything adjusted just right so that I get the same bend, the same consistent bend every single time. And there's a lot more that goes into that than you would probably really believe. Another big part of this, something I invented when I first started building these, is, you know, I've got this stop that I've created. So basically this is all thread, and I can adjust the length of this. And it's just a simple little stop so that as I make the bend, it comes up against a hard stop and you get the same thing every time. One thing that you might find interesting is that, so I've got that, this one is set for doing 90-degree bends for the body, but it's actually only good to do 90 degrees for this width of metal. Like say this was only half as wide, if I was to throw a piece in here and try to make the same 90-degree bend, it would actually go past 90 degrees. And so just because the stop is in a certain spot, it's also another one of the variables that's involved is the width of the metal itself. So I have different stops depending on which part I'm actually manufacturing. So for the body 90s, this is the particular rod that needs to be used. If I was doing like the 90s on the end cap, I've got different rods hanging on the wall over there. And there's one, of course, to do that because the width of the metal is substantially less. So I specifically waited until the very last body so that I could switch this out. So basically there's there's 5 bends, 5 90s go into a body, and there's 2 45s. So typically speaking, as I'm going through a batch, like I do all the 90s on all the bodies, then I go through and do all the 45s on all the bodies. So basically I just switch up my rod to the one that says 45. I'm constantly changing these too. You can see that a couple of nuts here, so one locks onto the other. I'm constantly just fine tuning these. Like even just one, you know, 1/2 of a turn or a full turn can really make a difference in what you get in terms of the bend. And so, see, that's a really nice 90. A lot of times I'm checking my work as I go along with this gauge also to make sure. Like right now, man, that's just dead nuts on right at 90. I'm usually pulling my hair out because getting a consistent bend to run the full length of the bend, a lot of times, like I'll have like a perfect 90 at this end and it'll be off by a degree down there. And I have just gone, I've spent days and days and days of my time chasing that perfect bend and trying to figure out, well, why is it bending a 90 at this side and not on that side? And that's where all the adjustability of the machines and trying to keep everything dialed into where it's all just right. It really is a pain in the ass. This is also my first day back bending metal after having the surgery, the hernia surgery. And you definitely use your core to make these bends. And so, all right, so here's my first 45 bend. And usually when I make the first bend, I'll at least check that one because if I have to make an adjustment, I want to make it as soon as I can. Once you make the bend, you're basically done. Unless it's like slightly underbent, sometimes you can kind of go back and change that a little bit. All right, I got my deal right at 45. If you look at this, man, that's just absolutely spot on this end. I'm not sure if you guys can really see that. And it is just a hair over bent on this side of it, which could be just about anything. I might have looked at it funny, who knows, but it's certainly close enough to make completely viable parts, so not a big deal. All right, so basically that's the first body completely done. So I'll go through and I'll do the rest of my 45s on the entire batch. Then I'll jump in and I'll do like all the end caps and then I'll start working on the lids. I've had some issues the last couple batches with the lids being really lazy, the 45s in particular at one end. And I just spent another full day of my time messing around with this metal brake here. And I think I finally figured out why it was lazy at one end of the bend as opposed to the other. And so I think I've got this dialed in. I've been really looking forward to doing this particular batch and seeing how they come out, because I'll really be relieved if I get the bends that I'm after and that I get that taken care of. The last probably 2 or 3, I guess, batches, it's been that way. And man, you know, I just don't even know. It's like, you know, there's a lot of force that goes into making a bend. And so, you know, something like, here's some of the adjustment for the beam on this particular one. You know, if something just comes even just, you know, a few thousandths out, it really affects the bend. And the next thing you know, I'm all the way through the full batch of lids before I realize that, oh man, I've been making sloppy bends this whole time. It's nothing that stops me from, you know, completing the batch or selling anything. They're fine. Like, end user would never even know. But it makes my life easier when the bends are really nice and precise and just 100%. So thought I'd show that really quick. I spent so much time chasing those perfect bends. It's just, you know, one of those things. So anyway, I'm going to get back to work. Erica Solo Box. Talk to you later.